Ethics in research. This is important as it provides researchers with ethical principles or guidelines for the successful conduct of research. But first, what is ethics? As broadly defined, ethics is the morality of a human act. By morality, we mean the rightness or wrongness of a human act. Ethics is concerned with what is good for the people and the society as a whole. Ethics, therefore, provides rules that govern the society as a whole. This explains why behaving ethically means doing the right thing at the right time. In research, ethics provides guidelines for the responsible conduct of research, allows research and scholars to further educate themselves and monitor their activities in the conduct of research, as to ensure a high ethical standard. Now, here are some ethical principles that guide research. First, honesty. Researchers ought to honestly report data and results of the study, including the methods and procedures employed in data gathering, as well as publication status. Thus, researchers should not falsify, fabricate, and misrepresent data and results. Objectivity. Researchers should uphold objectivity and scientific rigor at all times. Thus, researchers should strive to avoid all forms of bias in research, such as biases in experimental design, data analysis and interpretation, peer review process, grant writing, and other facets of research. Confidentiality. Researchers should always uphold the principle of confidentiality. One way of effectively doing this is to protect confidential communication, such as papers are not submitted for publication, patient records, and etc. Competence. Researchers are supposed to be knowledgeable and expert in their own discipline or field of specialization. In short, researchers should be incompetent scholars. Thus, they ought to maintain and improve their professional competence and expertise through lifelong education and learning. More importantly, they ought to take steps to promote competence in science. Integrity. Researchers ought to keep their promise and honor agreements, such as agreement with donors and research participants. Thus, researchers need to strive for consistency in thought and action. Legality. Research always has a legality dimension. Thus, researchers ought to obey laws and relevant institutional and government policies. Maturity and openness. Knowledge is supposed to be free. Hence, researchers must willingly share data, results, ideas, and resources. They must be open to constructive criticism and new ideas. Respect for intellectual property. Researchers ought to honor copyright, patents, and other forms of intellectual property. Thus, they should not use methods, data, and results owned by other researchers or scholars without permission or paper acknowledgement. More importantly, researchers should avoid plagiarism at all times. Responsible publication. Researchers need to publish in order to advance knowledge and scholarship and not just to advance one's own career. They also need to avoid wasteful publication, such as publishing predatory journals and duplicative publication. Non-discrimination. Researchers ought to avoid all forms of discrimination against colleagues and students on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, and other forms that can relate on their scientific competence and dignity. For this reason, researchers ought to respect their colleagues and treat them fairly. Senior researchers also need to help educate, mentor, and advise students. They have to promote the welfare of their students and allow them to make their own decisions. Human subjects protection. Researchers should respect human dignity, privacy, and autonomy at all times. When conducting research on human subjects, researchers should take precautionary measures to minimize, if not completely, avoid harms and risks. They also need to maximize the benefits that participants may get from the results of the study. For instance, if the researcher discovers a cure for a particular disease through their research on indigenous plants, a reasonable part of the patent should go to the indigenous community where the plants are located. Animal care. In recent years, we have what we call animal rights. For this reason, researchers should respect animal rights at all times. As a result, they ought to show utmost care for animals when using them in research. Researchers, therefore, should not conduct unnecessary or poorly designed animals experiments. Social responsibility. Researchers should conduct research not only for the advancement of their career, but for the good of society as a whole. Thus, researchers should strive to